The last thing Dahlia Barrett expected to find in her grandmother's basement was a dragon egg. Yet there it sat, nestled in a bed of shimmering crystals, its iridescent shell pulsing with a faint blue light that cast dancing shadows on the concrete walls. At 14, Dahlia had seen plenty of strange things in her grandmother Eleanor's house, but this was different. This was impossible. She reached out with trembling fingers, barely brushing the egg's surface. It was warm, warmer than it should be in this cold basement, and something inside shifted at her touch. Dahlia jerked her hand back, her heart pounding against her ribs. The events of the past week crashed over her like a wave, the mysterious phone call in the middle of the night, the police at their door, and the horrible news that changed everything. Eleanor Barrett had been found dead in her remote mountain home. The police called it a robbery gone wrong, but nothing had been taken. Nothing except, perhaps, the secrets that died with her grandmother. Or so Dahlia had thought, until her parents sent her to pack up Eleanor's belongings and she discovered the hidden door behind the old bookshelf. The basement stretched far beyond what should have been possible, carved deep into the mountain itself. Rows of empty nests lined the walls, each filled with the same strange crystals that cradled the egg. Heat lamps hung from the ceiling, their bulbs dark now, but Dahlia could imagine them bathing the chamber in artificial warmth. The air smelled of smoke and something else, something wild and ancient that made her skin tingle. "Oh, Gran," Dahlia whispered, her voice echoing in the vast space, "what were you hiding?" A soft chirp answered her. The egg was moving now, hairline cracks spreading across its surface like spider webs. Dahlia watched, frozen between fear and fascination, as a small claw punched through the shell. Then another. The cracks widened, pieces falling away, until a head emerged, scaled and delicate, with eyes like molten gold. The baby dragon blinked at her, unfurling wings still wet from the egg. It was beautiful and terrifying, no larger than a cat but already radiating an otherworldly presence. Its scales shifted colors in the dim light, from midnight blue to deep purple and back again. A loud bang from upstairs made them both jump. The dragon chirped again, more urgently this time, and Dahlia acted on instinct. She scooped up the creature, wrapping it in her jacket, and grabbed the leather-bound journal she'd found next to the nest. Heavy footsteps crossed the floor above, too heavy to be her parents, who weren't due back for hours. The dragon squirmed against her chest as she crept up the basement stairs, her heart thundering so loudly she was sure whoever was up there would hear it. She reached the top and peered through the crack in the door. Two figures moved through Eleanor's kitchen, their shapes wrong somehow, too tall, too fluid in their movements. They weren't human. "The signature is strongest here," one of them said, its voice like grinding metal. "The old woman must have kept records." "Find them," the other replied. "The dragons cannot remain hidden forever." Dahlia clutched the journal tighter, her grandmother's last words to her suddenly taking on new meaning. "When the time comes, trust your instincts. They're never wrong." Right now, her instincts were screaming at her to run. She waited until the figures moved into the living room, then slipped out the basement door and through the kitchen. The dragon remained eerily quiet, as if it understood the need for silence. Dahlia made it to the back door, eased it open, and stepped out into the mountain air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Dahlia ran, her feet carrying her down the familiar path that led to the old barn where Eleanor used to spend so much time. She needed somewhere to hide, somewhere to think and figure out what to do next. The barn doors creaked as she pushed them open, and the smell hit her immediately, that same wild, smoky scent from the basement, but stronger here. The dragon stirred in her arms, its head emerging from the jacket to sniff the air. "You've been here before, haven't you?" Dahlia whispered. "Or others like you?" The answer came not from the dragon, but from above. A rustling in the rafters, then movement in the shadows. Dahlia looked up and her breath caught in her throat. 3 more dragons perched in the beams, their scales glinting in the dying light. They were larger than the hatchling, but still young, watching her with intelligent eyes that held no fear. The baby dragon chirped, and one of the older ones glided down to land before them. It approached cautiously, sniffing the hatchling, then turned its gaze to Dahlia. In that moment, she understood why her grandmother had kept this secret, why those creatures had killed her to find it. These weren't just animals, they were something more, something that could change the world if the wrong people got their hands on them. A distant crash echoed from the house. They'd found the basement. Dahlia had minutes, maybe less, before they started searching the grounds. She opened her grandmother's journal with shaking hands, flipping through pages of notes and diagrams until she found what she needed, a map, marked with locations across the mountains. "Okay," she said, looking at the dragons gathered around her. "I don't know if you can understand me, but I'm pretty sure those things up there killed my grandmother, and they'll kill you too if they find you. So we need to leave. Now." The larger dragon tilted its head, then lowered its body in what could only be an invitation. Dahlia hesitated for just a moment before climbing onto its back, securing the hatchling in her jacket. As the barn doors burst open behind them, the dragon spread its wings and leaped into the darkening sky, carrying her toward an uncertain future and a destiny her grandmother had prepared her for without ever saying a word. They were halfway up the mountain when Dahlia heard the inhuman screams of rage echo across the valley. She didn't look back. Her grandmother's journal held the answers she needed, and somewhere in these mountains was a sanctuary Eleanor had built for moments like this. All Dahlia had to do was find it, and figure out how to become the dragon keeper her grandmother had trained her to be without ever telling her. Dawn broke over the mountain peaks, painting the snow-capped summits in shades of rose and gold. Dahlia huddled deeper into the cave, surrounded by the warmth of dragon bodies. The hatchling she'd rescued, now named Ember, slept curled against her chest while the older dragons maintained a protective circle around them. She hadn't slept much, spending most of the night reading her grandmother's journal by the dim light of her phone. Eleanor's elegant handwriting filled page after page with details about dragon physiology, behavior, and something she called the resonance, a mysterious connection between dragons and their chosen humans. The resonance isn't just about control, Eleanor had written. It's about trust, about understanding that these creatures aren't meant to be tamed but to be partnered with. The Shadow Corp doesn't understand this. They never will. Dahlia traced the word with her finger. Shadow Corp. The name appeared throughout the journal, always accompanied by warnings. They were the ones hunting dragons, the ones who had likely sent those inhuman creatures to her grandmother's house. But why? A soft chirp drew her attention. Ember had awakened, golden eyes blinking up at her with an intelligence that still took Dahlia's breath away. The dragon's scales had darkened overnight, settling into a deep sapphire blue with threads of silver running through them. "You're beautiful," Dahlia whispered, running her fingers along Ember's spine. The dragon arched into her touch, and suddenly Dahlia felt something. A warmth in her mind, like sunshine breaking through clouds, accompanied by a feeling of hunger that wasn't her own. She fumbled for her grandmother's journal, flipping to a section about feeding young dragons. "Crystal essence," she read aloud. "The young ones need it to develop their abilities." The larger dragon that had carried her, she'd started calling him Storm, lifted his head at her words. With deliberate movements, he padded to the back of the cave and began digging. Storm uncovered a cache of crystals similar to the ones from the basement nests, their surfaces glowing with that same inner light. He carefully selected one and brought it to Dahlia. The crystal was warm in her hand, pulsing like a heartbeat. "How do I?" she began, but Ember was already moving, opening its mouth to reveal tiny, razor-sharp teeth. The dragon bit into the crystal, and Dahlia watched in amazement as the glow seemed to drain from the stone into Ember's body. The hatchling's scales brightened, shimmering with renewed energy. A distant whirring sound made them all freeze. Storm's head snapped toward the cave entrance, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Through the morning mist, Dahlia spotted something that made her blood run cold, a sleek black drone, its surface reflecting the sunrise as it methodically scanned the mountainside. "They're looking for us," she breathed. The other dragons shifted restlessly, but none took flight. They knew better than to reveal themselves. Dahlia pulled out the journal again, searching frantically for anything that might help. Her grandmother must have dealt with this before. She found what she needed in a chapter about dragon abilities. The resonance can be used defensively, Eleanor had written. When dragon and keeper are truly in sync, they can bend light around themselves, becoming virtually invisible to both electronic and organic detection. Dahlia looked at Storm, who was watching her intently. "Can you teach me?" she asked. The dragon moved closer, pressing his forehead against hers. The sensation that flooded her mind was stronger this time, not just emotions, but images, instincts, knowledge that felt ancient and vast. She saw through Storm's eyes, felt the way he perceived the world through more than just visible light. The resonance wasn't about forcing the dragons to do anything, it was about understanding their natural abilities and working in harmony with them. Dahlia closed her eyes, focusing on that connection. She imagined the light bending around them, just as Storm showed her in his memories. The air seemed to shimmer, and when she opened her eyes, the cave entrance appeared empty from the outside. The drone hovered closer, its sensors sweeping the area. Dahlia held her breath, maintaining her focus on the resonance. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the drone moved on, continuing its search further up the mountain. "That was amazing," Dahlia whispered once it was safe. Storm rumbled in agreement, and she felt a surge of pride through their connection, both his and her own. She was beginning to understand why her grandmother had dedicated her life to protecting these creatures. But they couldn't stay in the cave forever. The journal mentioned a network of sanctuaries Eleanor had established throughout the mountains, places where dragons could live safely away from Shadowcorp's prying eyes. The nearest one was marked on the map, hidden in a valley 3 peaks away. "We should move tonight," Dahlia said, studying the route. "The dark will give us better cover." The dragon stirred at her words, sensing the plan forming in her mind through the resonance. They would have to fly high and fast, using the cloud cover for protection. As she packed her meager supplies and secured Ember in a makeshift sling, Dahlia found herself thinking about her parents. They must be worried sick by now. But she couldn't contact them, couldn't risk leading Shadowcorp to the dragons. Her grandmother had died protecting this secret, Dahlia would honor that sacrifice by doing the same. Storm nuzzled her shoulder, sensing her distress. Through their strengthening bond, she felt his reassurance, she wasn't alone in this. The dragons would protect her just as she protected them. Together, they would find a way to survive and, eventually, to stop Shadowcorp from destroying everything Eleanor had built. As the sun climbed higher, Dahlia used the time to practice with the resonance. Each dragon had its own unique signature in her mind. Storm's was steady and strong like mountain bedrock, while Ember's flickered and danced like a candle flame. The other 2 dragons, whom she'd named Aurora and Slate, had their own distinct presences. The more she worked with them, the more she understood what her grandmother had meant about partnership. These weren't pets to be controlled or weapons to be wielded. They were intelligent, emotional beings with their own thoughts and desires. The resonance simply allowed them to share those thoughts, to work together in ways that neither species could achieve alone. But that was exactly what made them so valuable to Shadowcorp. If they could find a way to force the resonance, to bend dragons to their will. Dahlia shuddered at the thought. She wouldn't let that happen. Whatever it took, she would protect these dragons and her grandmother's legacy. Night couldn't come soon enough. The mountain sanctuary wasn't what Dahlia expected. Instead of caves or wooden structures, she found herself standing before a seamless wall of black stone that seemed to absorb the moonlight. Storm landed gracefully on a narrow ledge, allowing her to dismount. Aurora and Slate circled overhead, keeping watch while Ember stirred in the sling across Dahlia's chest. "This can't be right," she muttered, consulting the journal's map again. But the coordinates were clear, this was the place. She ran her hand along the smooth surface, feeling nothing but cold stone until, there. A slight vibration under her fingers, accompanied by a familiar warmth in her mind. The resonance. Storm pressed his snout against the rock face, and suddenly patterns of light began spreading outward from the point of contact, forming intricate geometric designs that pulsed with energy. The wall shifted, revealing a hidden entrance large enough for even the biggest dragons to pass through comfortably. Inside, Dahlia found herself in a vast chamber that put her grandmother's basement to shame. The ceiling soared hundreds of feet overhead, supported by crystalline columns that emitted a soft, ever-changing light. Nests of various sizes were carved into the walls, many showing signs of recent use. But it was the center of the chamber that took her breath away. A massive holographic display flickered to life as they entered, projecting a three-dimensional map of the entire mountain range. Dozens of points of light pulsed across its surface, other sanctuaries, she realized. Her grandmother hadn't just built one haven for the dragons, she'd created an entire network of them. "Welcome, Dahlia Barrett," a voice said, making her jump. A figure materialized beside the map, not physically present, but a sophisticated hologram. It wore Eleanor's face, but its movements were too precise, too measured to be human. "I am Guardian, the artificial intelligence your grandmother created to protect the sanctuary network." Dahlia's mind reeled. Gran made an AI. How? She was a dragon keeper, not a. Eleanor Barrett was many things, Guardian interrupted, its expression softening in a way that was painfully familiar. Scientist, programmer, conservationist. But above all, she was a protector of dragons. And now, it seems, that mantle has passed to you. Before Dahlia could respond, warning lights began flashing throughout the chamber. The holographic map zoomed in on their location, showing multiple red dots converging on the sanctuary. Guardian's expression turned grave. ShadowCorp strike team detected. Estimated arrival, 15 minutes. They've developed a way to track the resonance signature. Storm growled, the sound echoing off the walls. Through their connection, Dahlia felt his anger and fear, not for himself, but for Ember and the other young dragons. "What do they want?" she demanded. "Why are they hunting dragons?" Guardian waved a hand, and new images appeared in the air around them. Technical diagrams, research notes, and surveillance footage showing facilities where dragons were held in sterile cells, covered in monitoring equipment. ShadowCorp believes they can artificially replicate the resonance, the AI explained. They think if they can understand and control it, they can turn dragons into living weapons. What they fail to comprehend is that forced resonance is inherently unstable. Their experiments have already caused dozens of deaths, both human and dragon. Dahlia thought of the inhuman creatures that had invaded her grandmother's house. The ones who killed Gran, they weren't natural, were they? Failed attempts at human-dragon hybridization, Guardian confirmed. ShadowCorp believed they could create perfect handlers by splicing dragon DNA into their agents. Instead, they created abominations that can track resonance signatures but lack the empathy necessary for true bonding. The warning lights pulsed faster. 12 minutes now. Dahlia's mind raced. "We need to evacuate. Get the dragons to another sanctuary." "Impossible," Guardian said. "They're monitoring all possible escape routes. But there may be another way." The AI's form flickered, and suddenly Eleanor's face looked tired, worried. "Your grandmother left contingencies. Protocols she hoped would never be necessary. There's a reason she made sure you would find the journal, Dahlia. A reason she prepared you without ever telling you what she was preparing you for." Storm pressed against Dahlia's side, and through their bond, she felt something new, a memory, but not his own. A shared memory, passed down through generations of dragons. She saw great battles in the sky, dragons and humans fighting side by side against a darkness that threatened to consume everything. The resonance wasn't just a connection, it was a weapon, but one that could only be wielded through perfect trust and harmony. The sanctuaries aren't just safe houses, Dahlia realized, the pieces clicking into place. They're fortresses. Guardian nodded. Each one contains defense systems that can only be activated through the resonance. Your grandmother designed them that way to ensure they could never be used against the dragons themselves. But activating them requires a level of resonance few humans have ever achieved. 8 minutes. The red dots were getting closer. Dahlia looked at Storm, then at Ember, who was watching her with those impossibly ancient eyes. She thought of her grandmother, who had died protecting this secret, this legacy. Show me what to do. The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. Guardian guided her through the sanctuary's systems while Storm and the other dragons took up defensive positions. The AI explained that the sanctuary's crystals could amplify the resonance, turning it into a shield that would not only protect them but potentially sever ShadowCorp's ability to track them. But be warned, Guardian said as Dahlia took her position in the center of the chamber. This level of resonance will change you. The connection goes both ways. Are you prepared for that? 6 minutes. Through the sanctuary's sensors, Dahlia could see the strike team approaching, dozens of the hybrid creatures, armed with weapons designed to incapacitate dragons. Behind them came vehicles carrying what had to be research equipment. They weren't just hunting now, they were planning to turn the sanctuary into a laboratory. I'm prepared, Dahlia said, and she felt the truth of it in her bones. Storm moved to stand beside her, with Aurora and Slate flanking them. Ember chirped from the sling, and she felt the hatchling's resonance joining with the others, creating a harmony of energy that made the very air hum. As Guardian began the activation sequence, Dahlia closed her eyes and opened herself fully to the resonance. The last thing she heard before the power took hold was her grandmother's voice, not Guardian this time, but a memory, clear and strong. The greatest power comes not from control, but from trust freely given. The sanctuary erupted with light. The resonance surged through Dahlia like lightning, raw power that threatened to tear her apart. But Storm's presence anchored her, his strength flowing into her even as her consciousness expanded to encompass the entire sanctuary. She could feel every crystal, every circuit, every pulse of energy that made up the fortress's defenses. More than that, she could feel the dragons, not just Storm and the others with her, but dozens more, hidden in sanctuaries across the mountains. Their minds touched hers through the resonance network her grandmother had built, carrying centuries of memories and knowledge. The first wave of ShadowCorp hybrids hit the sanctuary's outer defenses like a tide breaking against stone. Through the facility's sensors, Dahlia watched them recoil as resonance fields rippled outward, disrupting their ability to track dragon signatures. But they weren't retreating. They're adapting, Guardian warned, its holographic form flickering with concern. ShadowCorp's modifications allow them to evolve in response to resonance exposure. Dahlia gritted her teeth as she felt the hybrids probing the sanctuary's defenses, looking for weaknesses. Then we'll have to adapt faster. She reached deeper into the resonance, drawing on Storm's knowledge of aerial combat and Aurora's gift for strategy. The sanctuary responded to her thoughts, crystalline walls shifting to create new configurations. Defense turrets emerged, powered not by conventional energy but by concentrated resonance. When they fired, they didn't shoot bullets or lasers, but pulses of pure dragon energy that the hybrids couldn't predict or counter. But ShadowCorp hadn't come unprepared. A massive vehicle rolled forward, unfolding into what looked like a scientific instrument crossed with a weapon. Resonance dampener, Guardian identified. If they activate it successfully, it will disrupt all dragon abilities within range. Dahlia felt Storm's alarm through their bond. Without their innate powers, the dragons would be vulnerable. More than that, severing the resonance could harm them permanently. She couldn't let that happen. Ember, she called, and the hatchling raised its head from the sling. I need your help. Despite its size, Ember's resonance burned bright and pure, untainted by fear or doubt. Through their connection, Dahlia felt the dragon's unwavering trust. She gathered the combined energy of all 4 dragons, weaving it together with her own consciousness and the sanctuary's power. The crystals around them began to sing, a harmonic frequency that made the air itself vibrate. The dampener powered up, its core glowing with sickly green light. But before it could fire, Dahlia released the gathered energy in a focused burst. The resonance beam struck the machine dead center, and for a moment everything seemed to freeze. Then the dampener exploded, the blast sending hybrids scattering. But Dahlia's victory was short-lived. Through the smoke emerged a figure that made her blood run cold, tall and elegant in a pristine white suit, its movements too smooth to be human. "Director Thane," Guardian said, real fear in its artificial voice. "Shadow Corp's most successful hybrid. Eleanor warned me about him." Thane walked calmly through the chaos, the fighting parting around him like water. When he spoke, his voice carried easily through the sanctuary's sensors. "Impressive, child. Your grandmother would be proud. But did she tell you what she stole from us? What she denied humanity in her misguided attempt to protect these creatures?" "She didn't steal anything," Dahlia shot back, though she felt Storm tensing beside her. "The dragons chose to follow her. They chose freedom." "Freedom?" Thane laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "They are power incarnate, the key to humanity's evolution. Your grandmother understood that once. She helped design the hybridization process before her, crisis of conscience." The revelation hit Dahlia like a physical blow. She turned to Guardian, but the AI's grim expression confirmed it. "Eleanor worked for them?" "She was young," Guardian said softly. "Brilliant and ambitious. But when she saw what they planned to do with her research, she sabotaged the program and fled with as many dragons as she could save." Thane reached the sanctuary's entrance, placing one perfectly manicured hand against the barrier. The resonance could transform humanity, eliminate disease, extend life itself. Instead, she hid it away in these mountains, guarded by children and faulty AIs. Through their bond, Storm showed Dahlia the truth, memories of the dragons who hadn't escaped, twisted and broken by Shadow Corp's experiments. The hybridization process didn't just change humans physically, it corrupted the very essence of what made the resonance possible. "You're wrong," Dahlia said, her voice growing stronger as understanding filled her. "The resonance isn't about power or evolution. It's about trust, about working together. That's why your experiments keep failing. You're trying to take by force what can only be given freely." Thane's perfect face twisted into something ugly. "Then we'll take it from your corpse, just like we took it from hers." He pressed harder against the barrier, and Dahlia felt the resonance field fluctuate. Somehow, he was absorbing its energy, using it to force his way through. Storm roared a challenge, and the other dragons took up battle positions. But Dahlia felt their uncertainty. Thane wasn't like the other hybrids, he was stronger, more controlled, and he knew exactly how to exploit the resonance. "The sanctuary's defenses are failing," Guardian reported. "His hybrid physiology is more advanced than our countermeasures." Dahlia watched as cracks began spreading from where Thane touched the barrier. They had seconds, maybe less. But as fear threatened to overwhelm her, she felt Ember's warmth against her chest, its unwavering confidence flowing through their bond. The hatchling's presence reminded her of something she'd read in her grandmother's journal, a passage that had seemed cryptic until now: "The strongest resonance comes not from one dragon and one human, but from many hearts beating as one." Understanding bloomed. She'd been trying to fight like Shadow Corp, focusing on power and control. But that wasn't what Eleanor had built these sanctuaries for. They weren't fortresses, they were homes, places where dragons and humans could live in harmony. As Thane breached the barrier, Dahlia made her choice. Instead of gathering energy to attack, she opened herself completely to the resonance, inviting the dragons to share not just their power, but their very essence with her. Storm, Aurora, Slate, and Ember responded instantly, their minds merging with hers in perfect trust. The sanctuary's crystals blazed with unprecedented light, and Dahlia felt something she'd never experienced before: pure, unconditional love, flowing through the resonance like a river of living fire. This was what her grandmother had protected, what ShadowCorp could never understand or replicate. And in that moment of perfect clarity, Dahlia knew exactly what she had to do. Time seemed to slow as Thane stepped through the shattered barrier, resonance energy crackling around him like dark lightning. But Dahlia wasn't afraid anymore. The combined consciousness of 4 dragons flowed through her, and with it came a certainty that transcended fear. Your grandmother made the same choice once, Thane said, his perfect features twisted in a sneer. She thought love and trust could overcome progress. Look where that got her. Through the resonance, Storm shared a memory, Eleanor, younger but unmistakable, standing in a ShadowCorp lab. She was arguing with Thane, her face fierce as she gestured at caged dragons writhing in pain. They're dying, she shouted. The forced resonance is killing them. Sacrifices must be made, Thane's past self replied coldly. The hybridization process is nearly perfect. A few more tests. No. Eleanor's voice carried the same steel Dahlia had always remembered. I won't help you torture them anymore. She slammed her hand down on a console, and alarms began blaring. The memory shifted, showing Eleanor leading dragons to freedom, establishing the first sanctuary, creating Guardian to protect them. She hadn't just walked away, she'd dedicated her life to undoing what she'd helped create. She wasn't weak, Dahlia said, her voice amplified by the resonance. She was strong enough to admit she was wrong. Strong enough to change. Thane moved with inhuman speed, closing the distance between them. But Storm was faster, interposing his massive body between them. Aurora and Slate flanked him, their scales glowing with shared power. Even Ember, still small but fierce, added its strength to their union. How touching, Thane sneered. But resonance can be broken. He raised his hands, and dark energy pulsed from his modified body. Dahlia felt it like ice in her veins, trying to disrupt the connection between her and the dragons. But there was something Thane hadn't counted on. Through the sanctuary's resonance network, Dahlia could feel other dragons awakening, responding to their shared danger. Not just in this sanctuary, but in havens across the mountains. Dozens of minds touched hers, offering their strength. Guardian, she called. Initiate Protocol Aurora. The AI's hologram smiled, not Eleanor's smile this time, but something uniquely its own. With pleasure. The sanctuary's crystals pulsed in perfect harmony. Similar pulses echoed from other sanctuaries, creating a web of resonance energy that covered the entire mountain range. Thane's attack faltered as he felt it, his eyes widening with the first real emotion Dahlia had seen, fear. What are you doing? He demanded. Showing you what real resonance looks like. Dahlia opened herself fully to the network, becoming a conduit for the combined power of every dragon in the sanctuary system. It was like trying to channel a sun through her body, but she wasn't alone. Storm's strength supported her, while Aurora and Slate helped direct the energy. Ember's pure, untainted resonance acted as a focal point, turning raw power into something more refined. The light that burst from them wasn't just energy, it was truth made manifest. It swept through the sanctuary, over the hybrid army outside, across the mountains themselves. Wherever it touched, it revealed things as they truly were, stripped of deception and corruption. Thane screamed as the light engulfed him. His perfect form began to crack, the unstable hybridization process finally failing under the pressure of pure resonance. But instead of destroying him, the light did something else, it healed. When it faded, Thane fell to his knees, transformed. The draconic mutations were gone, leaving him human again. Around the sanctuary, other hybrids were experiencing the same change, their corrupted forms returning to normal. How? Thane gasped, staring at his trembling hands. We tried for years. Because you tried to force it, Dahlia said gently, understanding at last what her grandmother had discovered. Real healing can only come through harmony. The resonance doesn't give us power over dragons, it teaches us how to work together, how to heal together. Through their shared consciousness, the dragons showed her visions of possibility, a future where humans and dragons could help each other, using the resonance to restore damaged ecosystems, advance medicine, and explore the boundaries of what both species could achieve when working in trust. "Your grandmother tried to tell me once," Thane said, his voice heavy with realization. "About the difference between control and cooperation. I didn't listen. I couldn't understand. But you can now," Dahlia said. She could feel it through the resonance. The healing light hadn't just restored his body, it had cleared his mind of the corruption that had driven him for so long. "Help us make it right." As the sun rose over the mountains, painting the sanctuary in colors of hope, Dahlia felt her grandmother's presence in every crystal, every circuit, every line of code in Guardian's program. Eleanor hadn't just built a refuge, she'd created a foundation for a new kind of future. One by one, the dragons of the sanctuary landed around them. Not as weapons or subjects, but as partners. Storm pressed his head against Dahlia's shoulder, and through their bond she felt his pride and joy. Ember chirped from its sling, its scales now shimmering with all the colors of dawn. "What now?" Thane asked, looking lost but somehow younger, unburdened. Dahlia smiled, feeling the weight of her grandmother's journal in her pocket, and the lighter weight of responsibility in her heart. "Now we do what Gran always wanted, we build bridges instead of walls. Together." The resonance hummed through the sanctuary network, carrying her words to every dragon and human within reach. It wasn't an ending, she realized, but a beginning. Eleanor's final gift hadn't just been the sanctuaries or the journal or even Guardian, it had been the chance to make things right, to create something new from the ashes of the old. As she stood there, surrounded by dragons and reformed enemies alike, Dahlia finally understood what her grandmother had written in her last journal entry: "The greatest legacy we can leave is not the power we wield, but the trust we build. In the end, that's what saves us all." The morning light streamed through the sanctuary's crystals, casting rainbow patterns across the gathered assembly. A new day was dawning, and with it, a new chapter in the story of dragons and humans. Together, they would write it in trust, in harmony, and in hope.